This is 9/11, 10 years after. From WMAL and the museum, where history lives. Here is Torie Clarke.
I'm pleased to be joined by Virginia Congressman Frank Wolf. I consider you a hometown guy. I've lived and worked in this town since 1979, and you've just been a leading figure for the area, for the state, and on national security. And just if you could briefly take us back to 9/11 and where you were and where you first heard about what was happening and what your thoughts were.
I was on the Teddy Roosevelt Bridge coming in, and I heard my office call me the first time and said, Mr. Wolf, there was a plane that hit the World Trade Center, and I thought it must have been a private plane, a small paper cup or something. And then I turned on the radio, and I heard the second one. You just had that feeling of what was taking place. I came in, they evacuated the Capitol. I drove over to the Pentagon, and I watched what was taking place. I introduced myself. They let me stay there a while, and I just watched. And it was just a different day and a time that it seemed like America was changing so fast. About 30 people from my congressional district died in the attack on the Pentagon, and I was the author of the National Commission on Terror, which passed in 1998. A lot of people criticized it, frankly. On the cover of that report, it was the Bremer Commission report. There's a picture of the World Trade Center on fire.
Right.
But it's the 1993 attack in the World Trade Center. And the world has changed from now. It's a much more dangerous place. There have been some progress made, but I think there's some long way to go. And now we see a situation of not only in Afghanistan, but in some respects, Yemen has now become the seat of the danger, and so does the country of Somalia, because groups like Al-Shabaab. So in that period of time, there has been a lot of progress, but there have been a lot more problems.
Right. And you and Congressman King recently introduced legislation to reconstitute the 9/11 Commission.
We did.
What do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I talked to Lee Hamilton, who I thought did a great job with Governor Kane, and it just seems there are a lot of things that were done that were good. There are some things that were done that didn't work quite well, but I think there are a number of things that were recommended by the 9/11 Commission that were ignored by both the Bush administration and the Obama administration.
Such as?
By both. They had a number of ideas that were out there that they thought we should try and do, both being ignored up here in the Congress. One, intelligence committee, so everything is combined, so you don't have this fragmentation. Right now you have the CIA and others coming up to this committee, to that committee, to this so there were a lot of things. So I just think it's time to take a look, particularly with the 10th anniversary. When this took place, people weren't using BlackBerries. You could talk about an iPad. There was not an iPad. There was not an iPhone. There was not
no
an
blogging,
iPod.
no tweeting.
Right. The world has changed. And I believe for the decade out of the deadliest attack on our soil, we owe it to the American people to have an independent and comprehensive assessment by a group that I think everybody thinks did a good job. It was a bipartisan group. So when I talked to former Congressman Lee Hamilton, he thought it made sense. I also talked to former member Lehman, who was on the commission, former Secretary of the Navy in the Reagan administration. They thought it made a lot of sense. And I think you just want to get a second opinion, a second look, to come back and see where we are. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Or what should we be doing that we're not doing? At that time, they really didn't look at the issue of domestic radicalization. We see yesterday, with regard to the young soldier that was going to attempt to do the same thing, we've seen a number of domestic radicalizations. We've seen kids from around here gone to Pakistan. We see the Chesser case. We see people from Minneapolis going to Somalia, join Al-Shabaab. The latest figures, about 15 who are American citizens have died having joined Al-Shabaab, and many more are there. So just to take a look at that, and also to do it in a nonpartisan and non-political way.
Now, you know better than I do. This town is terrific at looking back and connecting the dots when we look back. Say you reconstitute the commission and they take a hard look at what's working, what's not, and really try hard to look ahead. Do you think the town and the country will be more receptive to looking ahead this time? Because in the late 90s, it's not that 2001 was completely unexpected. There were plenty of people ringing alarm bells saying, hey, bad things are happening out there. Bad people want to do harm to our country, to our people. It was just considered unlikely, and we had been relatively peaceful and prosperous, certainly in the continental United States. Do you think people will be more receptive to the findings of a commission this time?
I do, and I think the commission and the members, particularly Lee Hamilton and Governor Kane, would have greater credibility speaking on this than, frankly, the Congress or the administration, because both have been involved in such partisan bickering and differing. If one comes out, the other thinks it's a bad idea. If the other comes out, the other... I mean, I
right.
think they would offer, and of course, one is a Republican and one is a Democrat, and they did in-depth looking at this thing. I mean, there are members up here who actually opposed the 9/11 Commission. I supported it. But to take a look back, rather than... I mean, they know what was missed. I mean, Alaqui, who is now probably the number one after the death of bin Laden, Alaqui. I mean, they didn't get involved with Alaqui because a lot of people knew a lot about Alaqui. What about the whole issue of radicalization? We always thought the threat came from outside the country.
Right.
Now we see people, domestic people. I mean, the one fellow, Chesser, went to Oakton High School.
Right.
Which is out in my congressional district.
Yeah, it brings new meaning to homegrown, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Okay, so looking ahead, we really do want to be talking about constructive things, looking ahead. The war on terror ongoing, different people define it different ways, but clearly we're facing pretty significant threats. Where do you want to see the U.S. government devoting its resources? On the intel front, the military front? I see legal and economic implications, but looking forward, knowing there are somewhat unidentified but different kinds of threats out there, how do you want us to devote our resources and our time and energy?
I think we have to look at everything, but I think that's why I said the 9/11 Commission,
right.
to kind of look back and look ahead. They have that expertise. Frankly, the 9/11 Commission has forgotten more about this than most members of Congress and most people in the administration currently know. I mean,
right.
They went in depth. That's all they did, and if you remember, it was a unanimous report. So you look at everything. I mean, what are the intelligence? How has the DNI office worked? Has it been coordinated? What are the responsibilities? I mean, we just have to look at everything, and we ought not be afraid to look at it, but also look at what they did recommend, because there were a number of recommendations that were not implemented, and both with regard to how they made recommendations for Congress, which were not implemented, how they made recommendations for the administration. Now, we're not bringing them back for years. They'll come back for 120 days, at the most 6 months. But Lee Hamilton, who I have great respect, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, former chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, Governor Kane, former Republican governor, and I mean, you had Secretary Lehman, who was in the Reagan.
Right.
These are guys who, and lastly, they're not involved in the political process now.
Right.
They kind of meet the test. People who love their country more than they love their political party, and who they're never going to run for office and will speak truth to power.
Right. Great attributes. So, sir, tell me, how has your life changed? How has this changed you personally? A really bigger impact for you than many members of Congress because of the hometown experience, if you will. How have you changed?
Well, I'm concerned about it. I am chairman of the committee that funds the FBI.
Right.
I read all the intelligence reports. I look at all of this. It makes a big difference. We see what's taking place at airports. To get in a government building now, it's like getting into a prison. You go abroad and try to go through in one of our embassies, very difficult
right.
to get in. So the whole world's changed. But I'm not a pessimist. My wife and I, we have 5 kids, 15 grandkids. Looking forward, I believe we will come out of this. But I think you got to look at everything, and you got to do it in a way that both political parties can come together and see. And I think right now that Congress is so divided, so partisan, that to bring this group back, take a look at it. But I think everyone's life has changed. When you go to the airport 20 years ago, go to the airport now. Your life has changed dramatically.
Yeah, I hate
You can't even take on your little shampoo, your favorite shampoo. I mean, the whole world has changed. Try to get in the government building. Try to get in here. It's all changed. And also, we're losing a lot of our kind of privacy. I mean, there are cameras everywhere. So the world has changed. But it is not only in Afghanistan the threat. The threat is now in Yemen. I think the number one threat is now in Yemen with regard to al-Aqwi and that group. Also Somalia. And lastly, we see the domestic radicalization, and somehow we have to deal with this issue and look at it. We can't run and hide and pretend it's not there.
Right. You know, I try to be a word person. I'm not very good at it, but I try to communicate well, and I fail so many times. My father, who's a doctor, is so much better at this than I am. And I say it's such a different world, you know, and we're so hampered by our vocabulary. We use words like war, which for most of us has a beginning and an end. And he goes, I'm no expert on national security. He says, but I think what we face is more like a really severe chronic condition of some kind, in which it ebbs, you know, it flares up, and then it goes into remission, and it may pop up in different parts of your body, and you may have good days and good months and good years and then bad ones, but it's never going to go away completely. And I wonder if we don't have to get our heads and our hearts wrapped around something like that, because we so want an end to things. There may not be an end to these sorts of challenges.
I personally don't think there will be an end in our lifetime, because when you look at the radicalization, particularly, and you look at some of the people in Yemen and Somalia, they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, 30, and just because bin Laden was killed, and I congratulate the administration for that, al-Aqwi was born in America, sent to college with American taxpayers' funding, was connected to a mosque, which was right here in Northern Virginia, which I drive by many, many times, is an American citizen, and he's one of the biggest dangers that we have. So I think your dad is right.
Yeah, he's good.
But overall, America has prevailed. We've been in tougher times, too. You remember communism. People thought communism was going to take over the world. You remember the U.S. News and World Report would show more countries red than before, and we were ultimately able to prevail. That took from 1945 to basically 1989 to 1990 to 1991, the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it takes a long time.
Right.
It's a long, maybe war is it, but it's going to be a long effort. Your dad's right. There isn't going to be a signing of the end of this on an aircraft carrier that we break out and celebrate.
No simple ends.
Very simple.
Okay, so here's the last question, or the last challenge for you, sir. So it's the 10th anniversary of 9/11. You have a lot of people listening to you, and you know people, you know your constituents. They have busy, busy lives. But if on this day you wanted them to think about one thing, what would you want them thinking about?
Other men and women who are serving, who are adequately represented, both in the FBI, the CIA, the military. When you go to either Afghanistan or Iraq, or go over there and see the people that are serving, when you talk to the FBI, the DEA, the AT, all the people, and there are a lot of people who are giving their lives and dedicating their lives. And so lastly, we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the men and women who are serving, but to their families, particularly the families of those who have lost loved ones who are currently out at Walter Reed. 2 weeks ago, I talked to a young man. He's a principal out in Loudoun County. 6 tours, and he's in the National Guard. And so the families of those who serve, and ultimately the families of those who have paid the ultimate price.
Great words, sir. Great words. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all of your service as well.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
This is 9/11, 10 years after, from WMAL and the Museum, where history